Hello everyone, welcome back to the Brian Miller Tech channel. Today I want to talk about nothing. Nothing at all. I just sat down because I wanted to talk about nothing. Literally the only thing on my mind these past couple days has been nothing. Why am I even making a video if I have nothing to talk about? Is nothing even good enough for a video? I don't know, but I'm going to make one anyway. And yes, I'm talking about the company Nothing, not the actual word Nothing. Stupid intro aside, today we're going to be talking about the Nothing event that happened this Tuesday. Basically showing off the full prowess of the Nothing Phone 1. Now, what I think is interesting about Nothing, the company, is that from what I've seen so far, they are very different. Which I think is good for them, of course, because why even try to be in this market if you're like everyone else, which is definitely what they're preaching, is what their message is, I guess, but just something about them is a little interesting. So the very first product ever was, as many of us know in the tech community, the Nothing Ear 1s, which, by the way, I'm probably going to buy them soon and review them as a 2022 review, so yeah, subscribe for that if you want to see that. But I love headphones. If you didn't know, I have multiple pairs of Beats, multiple pairs of AirPods. Well, I used to until I lost them, but that's besides the point. I also have, like multiple headsets. I want to basically have as many as possible, and my wife Allison just doesn't really support that yet, but she'll get there. They started out with the Nothing Ear 1s, and they had a lot of hype surrounding them, mainly because Carl Pei, the co-creator of, OnePlus, or whatever he was, co-president, he helped start up this company, and I love OnePlus. Well, not now, because they're basically Oppo at this point, but back then, OnePlus was my favorite Android company, phone-making company. I like them more than Samsung because they didn't try to, bloatware their phone with a bunch of stuff, and it was very clean. Until Auction OS 12, and that's when you can really tell Carl Pei left. But Carl Pei left to start up Nothing because he didn't want to be, I guess, stuck behind regular old phone company. He wanted to create his own thing, his own vision. And I think starting off with headphones was probably the smartest move they could have done, really. I mean, imagine you start off your smartphone company, or start off a tech company, and then you try releasing your first product as a phone. That's a lot of pressure, for sure, especially as your very first product, whether it either fails or flops really hard or succeeds. So them, launching a smaller product, if you will, a less expensive product like headphones, and putting their design language out through that was definitely, I think, a good move. I like the way the Nothing Ear 1s look. They're transparent. The insides look freaking awesome. I haven't personally tried them, so I don't know the sound quality or the noise cancellation or transparency mode, if any of that works well or not. But from regular reviews like Mr. Who's a Boss and MKBHD, they say, hey, you don't get caught up in the hype, but they are a pretty good, decent product. So knowing that and seeing where they're going, you could probably guess what they were going to do with their very first Android phone. So on the event on Tuesday, apparently they shot the whole thing on the Nothing Phone 1, and the quality was definitely phone video quality. Like, I record all my videos on my iPhone 12 Pro Max, and I'm okay, I like it right now, but of course if I had the money, I'd definitely buy a mirrorless camera and use that. But for what it is, smartphone cameras are pretty good for what you need them for, of course. So I think it looked pretty good, especially in the opening, what store that Carl was in. I think the setting looked nice, and I think everything just looked okay. It's just a little, phone fuzziness, that kind of deal. But honestly, I was pretty impressed by what I saw from there. They recorded the entire thing on the Nothing Phone 1, so that was pretty smart. I like to see Apple actually try and do that. They're always preaching how good their iPhone video quality is. Why don't you just shoot one of your events with an iPhone, I mean, of course, They use those like super expensive cinema cameras, and they look amazing. But yeah, I know that like a week ago, or a couple weeks ago, earlier, Marques Brownlee released a video on the design of the Phone 1, and basically it's just like a transparent back, so you can see. I'm pretty sure it is that you can actually see the internals. But they also have what they call the glyph interface. Basically, it's like a bunch of lights, LED lights on the back. And they can do a whole bunch of things. Like, they have a lot of like weird ringtones, and what they did is they matched the glyph interface, like the LED lights, to those ringtones. So if you wanted to set like one of those ringtones, the glyph interface will be directly in sync with those sounds. You can actually select those ringtones and to us like a single contact. So say if it was your mother, you set that one ringtone to them, and if you have your phone on silent and you see that glyph interface, it's like bleh, you in a certain pattern that you recognize, you know it's them. So I think that is pretty cool. They also use it as, say you're recording a video, as a kind of like a ring light kind of thing. I'm not sure if it'll be super effective because it is lights on a back of a phone, but more light's better than no light for sure. So, I mean, for people who are starting out like making videos or something, and they don't have like a key light like me, I mean, it's a very cheap key light, but like a key light to help them out with their lighting, then hey, more power to them. It'll definitely be a helpful tool for sure. But also there's like a red little light they have in the back as like a recording indicator when you're recording videos. So that's also pretty cool. So I know with my iPhone sometimes if like the storage gets full on it, it just stops recording, but I have no way of knowing that. So I think it would be nice if all phones had that. But also at the bottom of the phone there's an LED, like an exclamation mark LED. And whenever you're charging the phone, it actually fills up the exclamation mark by how much the battery is actually being charged, or like the battery level basically, which is also really helpful if you like have your phone face down and you don't really like want to pick it up and like look at it and say, hey, what's the battery level? You can just look at the little thing at the bottom. So that's pretty cool. Another thing that caught my eye was that instead of trying to use like the most powerful, most power hungry, you know, super powerful latest Snapdragon Gen 8 or Gen 1, Snapdragon 8, 888, I don't even know what the numbers are honestly, Gen 1, they are using as like a Snapdragon 768G plus, something like that. Quote me if I'm wrong on that. But it's like a mid-range chip, if you will. And I think that's pretty interesting too. I'm pretty sure these mid-range chips by now, like the CPUs, are pretty like good enough to handle whatever task you throw at it that you like may need, like either messaging, Instagram, Twitter. Like those aren't apps that are particularly super demanding. So I think them opting for like the cheapest option they can. Sure, some people are avid mobile gamers, but at the same time, do you really, for a mobile game, need all that like horsepower to run a mobile game? Probably not. I mean, if you're playing Genshin Impact, I mean, tough luck. I mean, even on the latest iPhones, it kind of runs, like on my iPhone 12 Pro Max, it runs. I mean, it runs good enough for a phone, but like it's a very demanding game. So of course, for games like that, it'd probably be on like the lowest settings, lowest frame rate, but it'll definitely run for sure. But for games like Call of Duty Mobile, it should be fine for that. Like even my Note 5 ran Call of Duty Mobile just fine. So for those games, I don't think you have to worry about it too much. But yeah, I mean, if you're just doing basic tasks with your Android phone, like I do with my OnePlus all the time, like the OnePlus to me, it's definitely an older Snapdragon chip, but I don't really see all those hiccups because, well, for one, I'm running a custom ROM of Android 12, and Android 12 runs beautifully on this phone. But I also just don't do all that crazy stuff with my phone anyway. So I definitely think for a normal person, especially with the price tag, which I'm about to talk about later, this is a really good deal for what you're getting. And next I want to talk about like the display situation, which they called it controversial, but honestly, I think it's really cool because this is exactly what the iPhones have been doing since the iPhone 10. For their display, what they decided to use, which did cost more, a flexible OLED display. Now it's 6.5 inches, it's 120 hertz, blah, 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 blah. Okay, cool. But what they wanted to do was make the bezels all around the exact same size. Now, in order to do that, what they had to do was use flexible OLED displays to bend the physical display itself under it so that the borders around it can stay the same. And the reason why they have to do that is because, say on like my OnePlus 7 Pro, the bezels around the sides are pretty thin and around the top are pretty thin, but the bottom one's a bit thicker than the rest of them. Now, the reason why that is because manufacturers have to fit the display ribbon, connection ribbon to, in order for it to connect to the motherboard, they have to hide that piece somewhere. And they usually don't have a lot of space to do that, so they store it like at the bottom right here. It's not a lot of space, but it's definitely enough to throw off the balance of the bezels unless you make all the bezels that thick. But what Apple and now Nothing does is they take the flexible OLED displays that can bend, wherever you want it to. They bend that part a bit so that the connector is a little bit under the screen, so they don't have to store it around that bezel. So that's what they've been doing. It's called controversial, but I think it's really cool. I mean, that stuff multi-trillion-dollar companies do, like Apple, and like Samsung still hasn't done that from like from my knowledge at least. Like most companies just don't do that. They just still stuck it at the bottom, saying, yeah, it's good enough. But they call themselves OCD, and I appreciate it, honestly. But it's a 1080p OLED screen, like HDR10 plus certification, a billion colors. It's a Samsung panel. It's going to be good. I don't mind that it's 1080p at all. I think 1080p on a phone, at least, especially because it's small. Small enough, but like it's smaller so that the resolution really doesn't. At least, if it's 720p, then that's bad. And looking at you, iPhone XR. But being 1080p is definitely fine. Like, I don't have any complaints towards that. Now, the cameras they're using in the phone one are dual 50 megapixel cameras. Now, I know megapixels definitely aren't everything. In my case, my OnePlus 7 Pro has like a 48 megapixel cameras, but it looks a lot worse than my 12 megapixel iPhone 12 Pro Max cameras. But that's just because of computational photography for sure, and just the sensors that they're using. It could be a cheap 48 megapixel camera, or like an expensive one that actually takes decently good pictures. But like I said before, they were using the Nothing Phone 1 to record the whole event, and I think it looked decent at best. It wasn't mind blowing or anything, but it definitely looked pretty good. It's the 50 megapixel main camera, like wide camera, and then they are using a 50 megapixel ultra wide camera. To me, a telephoto really isn't all that useful on a phone, unless you're using like the Samsung S22 Ultra and it has like the 100x zoom or 50x zoom, whatever, and it looks pretty good, honestly. But honestly, I don't really see myself using that much. It's pretty niche. But opting for ultra wide is definitely, I think, the better option, because ultra wide is just a lot more fun. You can take crazy angles that you couldn't with a regular camera, and you don't have to back up or anything. It's just an ultra wide camera, so it's nice. But it has, night mode, so if you're like in low light, it will look good. On my OnePlus 7 Pro, I use Gcam. I installed like a sideloaded Gcam, or the Google camera, onto it, and it has built-in night mode too, and it just changes the way it looks dramatically. So if they can like do the same thing here, that'd be pretty cool. But let's go to pricing. The base price for 8 gigabytes of RAM and I think 128 gigs of storage, the price is going to be $399. $400. That just brings me back to the old OnePlus days. And I think that's just Carl being himself. He likes to make cheap phones, I guess. But it just, for all that, put into one. $399 for 8 gigs of RAM, 128 gigs of storage, dual 50 megapixel cameras, a 1080p Samsung OLED panel at 120 hertz, and it's one of those fancy ones that the bezels are really thin and are all the way around. It has a punch hole camera. It has clean software, like they mentioned before, that they didn't want to add anything to Android because they like Android, and I do too. I like base stock Android 12. And Android 13, I'm sure, will look pretty much the same, just slightly different. But just stock Android. Nothing OS is basically that, but of course nothing added features like, you know, connections to their nothing products like Ear One and stuff. But all that packaged into $399 is pretty impressive if you ask me. Like it has reverse wireless charging too, and you know it has 15-watt wireless charging and 5-watt reverse wireless charging, so you can charge whatever wireless charging device you have if you want to. All that for $399, $400 is pretty insane. Now, if you do want more storage for 8 gigabytes of RAM and 256 gigs of storage, that'll be $449. And if you want, you know, 12 gigs of RAM, which is a crazy amount, but it's Android. They're not the greatest at optimizing for RAM. But if you want 12 gigabytes of RAM and I think 2 or 128 gigs of storage or 256, I don't really remember. But that's going to be $500 or $499. Even then, that's still a pretty good deal in my book. So it's definitely looking good for the Nothing Phone 1 for sure. I mean, personally, of course, I want to get it. I want to buy it. I want to test it out. But, I mean, I don't really necessarily need it. So, I mean, unless y'all really want me to, you know, buy it, try it out, review it for you guys, just let me know in the comments below. And, hey, maybe I'll pick it up. And maybe my wife won't kill me if I do. Well, thank you guys for watching this video. I'm really interested in what Nothing is doing right now, and I'm rooting for them, you know. I want them to succeed because they are doing something a bit different. I like the way their brand is going, I like the direction it's going, and I also like Carl a lot. He's a cool dude. But thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Like the video if you like it, dislike it if you didn't. I won't be offended, it's okay. Let me know in the comments what else y'all want to see, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.